So I'm guessing at its very core is really stepping into a culture and understanding it and understanding the nuances of it. Am I correct to assume that?
And not only just culture and gender. So let me give you my own problem, particularly as it relates to women, okay? Because at one particular point, and I have to be honest, I was dealing with the crack cocaine era, right? And when women was coming into treatment, I had to look at my own stuff, my own biases. And that was a problematic for me because I was dealing with someone in my own family was on crack cocaine. And my initial reaction was, you're not supposed to be on crack cocaine.
Right.
You see? And I had to look at myself, and it was painful to me. Here I was treating at one particular point in my initial stages of working in the arena before we spawned off into what we started doing. I was working with obviously males as well as females and working with them. And I am the counselor working with them. And a young lady came into treatment, and I was like, my response was, what are you doing here? Mm-hmm. In front of everybody, right? True story. It's like, well, what are you doing here? Well, I didn't see the lady maybe after a month. I don't know if she was terminated from the program. I have no idea. And I'm a little still saddened by this, but this is my story. I ended up going to a clinic, and it was a HIV clinic. And I walked in, and the woman pushed me on the leg, says, hey, Mr. Wheeler. I said, hello. She says, I'm the woman you embarrassed.
Oh, man.
I'm the woman you embarrassed. And it just messed me up. It's just like, and I had to, right then and there, I'm thinking of all, and I said, you know what, ma'am, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just, right then and there. And so I think a lot of times I had to evolve to grow with my own biases because that was my own stuff, dealing with my own family stuff.
Sure.
And seeing a woman with children. And I had to get past me because my stuff was getting in the way, and how many women that could have hurt, okay, in that process. I didn't want to do that anymore, okay? I certainly did not want to do that. So I think I evolved as a result of somebody else's pain, hurt, injury, and I kept up with her after that.
Good.
And I think I resolved it, okay? But that is one of the reasons when we started to get into this particular area, I was gun-ho of getting women to come in and we may oversee it, okay, to look at this particular concept, and they be the writers of this particular program. So that's my history and why I really wanted to get into her. You didn't know anything about that, did you?
I never heard that story.
That's powerful.
But I have to be true to self.
But the truth of the matter is we all have biases. It doesn't matter who you are. You do. And it's recognizing that within yourself and going, really taking a hard look. And sometimes it takes those encounters for you to go, am I dealing with a bias here that isn't probably pretty? Mm-hmm. And how do I address that? And not everyone can do that. But Micah, you've taken this course or you've been trained in Heat Her. From your perspective, what really made you interested and how did you see this as impactful?
Well, I think it's very similar to what you were just saying. Guy and Darryl are very good about presenting information in a way that is sensitive to all cultures. And that allows you to let your guard down and really examine your own internal and unconscious biases. It's a very powerful training. You can probably tell that from hearing the way that they speak right now. The training is very much like this. And so you leave that training with a sense of personal growth and development, life improvement, new viewpoints, as well as hope that you can have a huge impact on the community. And that is one of the reasons that I left Dallas and came back to Tulsa and immediately started saying we need this here in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Wow. So you bring up gender-based care and, women designing the program. What does that even look like?
Well, quite honestly, at least from my standpoint, I didn't want to touch it.
I love the honesty and vulnerability we have going here.
Thank you, Mr. Turpin, for being so honest here today, sir.
I honestly didn't.
I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that.
Well, because I didn't think I was qualified to touch it.
There you go.
Sure.
And, I was familiar with the research that women are better equipped in delivering interventions to women. And I felt like many of those topics and subjects need to be dealt with by women.
So you felt like a little bit of an imposter stepping in there.
Exactly. It was like, okay, it needs to be done, but not by me.
Embrace the female side of yourself.
Exactly. So, but what ended up happening, we were put in a situation where we were challenged by a director out in Multnomah County, Oregon. And basically she said, you know, the field needs this. Have you looked at the data to look at what's happening with black female incarceration, with female incarceration, what's happening across the country? And I was like, well, and basically she said, if you don't do it, then who will? And so Guy and I began to talk about it, and we agreed right away that this would be something that we would probably be more hands-off with. We would sort of coordinate the project management aspect of it, but as far as the writing and what was the content that needed to be included in this model, we wanted to be hands-off. And that's exactly what we did. We were fortunate because we had networked and connected with many brilliant women across the country. And these women were judges. We had women with life experience in the criminal justice system. We had, of course, therapists. We had case
Women in
managers.
trauma. Women in trauma.
I mean, we just had a broad perspective. We have both black women and white women participating in this. And we wanted to assemble, and they just sort of had come into our space. We didn't really go actively recruiting. They just showed up. They were there. It was almost like
If you build it, they will come.
They were like, it was almost providential. They just showed up.
Yeah, that's true.
And and we assembled them together. And let me tell you, those women probably developed one of our best models. I'm even willing to say our best model. We have 4 different models. Our women's adult model, I think, is probably our best model.
Will you just talk a little bit more deeply about what the models consist of?
So, of course, we started off with African-American men age 18 to 29-year-olds, because 18 to 25, 18 to 23-year-olds were the ones that had the highest rates of recidivism, least likely to successfully complete treatment, least likely to engage in treatment. I mean, they were the most likely to be arrested. I mean, it was the rates were very high. So we wanted to go where the fire was burning again, the hottest, and the heat. That was heat. And while we respected the hospital, we wanted to go to the emergency room, and we felt like that was the population that was in the emergency room, not disrespecting other populations that were in the hospital. So we started off there, and right away, because of my work with juveniles for years, Guy and I began to look at the data in the juvenile system. It's even more horrendous. The disparities are even more blatant in the juvenile justice system. The foster care to prison pipeline is just, it's horrible. It's horrific.
And that's really where you can break the cycle.
Yes.
I think you get more bang for your buck there. I really do, by starting early. So right away, as soon as we had established that model, our adult model, we went right into African-American male adolescent populations. Shortly after that, that's when we were challenged with the women. We assembled these women together and we developed the HER model, Habilitation Empowerment Recovery model. So we ran with those 3 models for a while. HEAT for youth, our adolescent model, was being used as a violence prevention model. There were cities in the United States that have high rates of homicide, gang involvement, and other violent offenses. Birmingham, Alabama being one of those. The mayor of Birmingham decided that one of his violence prevention strategies would be to implement HEAT for youth in every school in the city of Birmingham.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
So we were very excited about that. So we went right to work right away, training these facilitators, getting them ready for school to deliver this intervention in every middle school and high school in the city of Birmingham. But when the school got wind of this, and of course we had to have their buy-in to make this part of their school curriculum, the school staff said, hey, we need to address the homicide and the violence in the community. But in the school, our most violent and most most at-risk group in our schools are girls. And
That's
we were like,
so interesting.
so we were like, well, and they said, can we use the boys model for the girls? And we were like, no, it's a very gender-specific model for adolescent boys. They said, well, if we're going to do this, if we're really going to have an impact, we got to do something. I mean, there were girls, there were stabbings, assaults, to the point of bloodthirsty interactions that were going on in these schools that were mostly committed by girls. And the school, the staff at the school insisted that we had to have something for the girls. So the mayor's office worked with us and said, hey, y'all got to get something for the girls. And so, again, we took the same approach as we did with the women's model and assembled professional women who had worked with girls before, and we developed Her for Girls. That model was just implemented last fall in the Birmingham Public Schools, and they're having phenomenal. As a matter of fact, they have more girls in the girls program than they do the boys, and they're having amazing, phenomenal success with it. So we're very excited about that.
Yeah. So I'd like to know just a little bit about what the program looks like. I mean, what does it look like if you, in a week, in a day, in a month? How long does it last?
Go ahead. You're good at that.
Well, our adult models are longer. Guy and I really wanted to implement what we want to adhere to best practices. And much of the research supports that the longer you have a person engaged in a therapeutic process or a therapeutic intervention, the more likelihood of successful, better outcome, ongoing recovery. So we wanted a longer program. So our program is 9 months for the 36 weeks for the men, 34 weeks for the women. Don't ask me why one is 34, one is 36. Remember, the women developed that women's model.
We don't have no control over it.
And we said, well, can you make it 36 weeks? They said, no, it's 34 weeks. So we just threw up our hands.
And you don't ask
said,
those questions.
No, I did not. I did not argue. So the women's is 34 weeks, the men's is 36 weeks. It's designed that you have clinical contact. It's designed if you use it as prescribed. It's 3 hours per week of intervention. So it's a cognitive behavioral intervention. So it's you have a facilitator guide delivered by the facilitator, and then each participant has a workbook. So it's twice a week, an hour and a half each set, 90 minutes each session, a total of 3 clinical contacts a week.
Gotcha. And that's, you were talking about the longevity. Like Women in Recovery has been very successful because it's around an 18-month program, right?
Yeah, you probably have better outcomes because of that.
And, I wanted to talk, you're in Tulsa because you're doing a training with Family and Children's Services. And so, Micah, tell us how this all kind of came about and what this week has been like with Guy and Darryl.
Oh, so this started whenever I was fortunate enough to be invited to attend their training down in Dallas, Texas by Kim Duran. And she invited a couple of our staff members, and so I got to be one of them. I went to the training honestly not knowing what to expect.
Yeah, and she sat on the front row.
That's very bold of you.
Yeah.
Being an overachiever, right?
That's how we know.
I think she
She's
second-guessed
that
herself.
student.
when she did it.
I'm that person. But I'm glad I did because I was able to develop this relationship with the two of you.
Yes.
And I've really benefited from having it. So, like I said earlier, attending that training was really life-changing and transformative in the way that I started thinking. So, I mean, I knew within the first couple days, even maybe the first couple hours, I was like, we can definitely benefit from this at home. It runs the gamut from like personal development, behavioral development, to families, to community, and then even like the socio-political level of things. And that's one reason I am so impressed with it, is that it addresses multiple things that impact the individual and our community. Growth and becoming hopefully more harmonious in the long run. And so I attended that training. I came back and I knew right away that really wanted to advocate for this training. It's been a little bit of a process, but I am thrilled that Family and Children's Services brought them here. Having them here has been wonderful, and I hope we keep that partnership going.
Well, let me say this about your agency. I don't know how you selected these folk to come to this training this week, but they have been phenomenal.
Yeah, I have to give them credit.
This has been one of the most phenomenal, because usually our trainings we do heat or hair. We don't usually do them together. You came to one where we did do it that way. We typically don't do it that way. And actually, I don't like doing it that way because it's very exhausting, quite honestly.
It's intense, for sure.
It's very intense.
Very intense.
And about time we leave at the end of the week, we're wiped out. We're exhausted. But let me tell you something. You all, I give you all kudos to the Family and Children's Services because you have assembled, obviously you have a great team of people, and the folks you have assembled to be a part of this has been absolutely amazing. It has not been draining.
No.
It has been very interactive, very well received, they're very engaged.
Wow.
I mean, it has been a growth because we grow also when we do the training, when we come in contact with professionals in the field. We have an opportunity to grow, and we've grown as a result of this experience. And then today, to cap it off, we were able to experience as a training team, all the trainees and ourselves were able to attend the Greenwood Tulsa Massacre Museum, and it was just unbelievable how the work we have been working on, discussing all week, and then having that experience together, how it all just meshed together and made it even more amazing.
That was powerful.
And it was very powerful. And you've got, it really takes a special group to be able to, I mean, these folk walked in, sat down, and right away we knew they were getting it.
Well, bringing culturally responsive programs just like this to Tulsa at this specific time, I think is critical. I mean,
And I must say, that Amy Leopard person,
Amy, oh my God.
she is a gem.
She's Joel, no question.
She is a gem. She has been
What?
an amazing host.
Yes.
And right away, she set the standard of what this was and what this was going to be.
The time and everything.
I mean, how even we were going to be professional, we're going to be on time, we need you to be attentive, and then how she has made this training experience for us. Because again, this could be exhausting, but she has made so accommodating.
That's been great.
And I think from her standpoint of being a trainer herself, she's really been sensitive and very much just a great host.
Proficient and professional.
And she's been amazing. So this has been a great experience for us. So we're really glad
well,
to be
I'm
here.
so glad. That's very nice for you to say all that. I appreciate you letting us know, and I'm glad that it has been a good, because I know the work can be exhausting.
Oh, yeah.
And let me add something that we probably should incorporate. We use the term HEAT is really Habilitation Empowerment Accountability Therapy. And when we start talking about habilitation, we take into consideration what has always been missing. When we talk about rehabilitation, it has always been from the 1960s that somebody who went into treatment that already had the gifts. Everything was already taken into consideration.
Yeah, they had skills and capacities already.
They had them already. But we recognize that a lot of these gaps have been missing. Okay, the family structure has totally changed.
Yes.
Within the last 30 to 40 years. So we have to take that into consideration because even the basic manners, how you go about it, how you handle stuff is totally different. So we're talking about going back to the basics.
Well, I think that's critical because I'm sure the model begins to adjust as the world changes too.
And it has changed over the last 30 to 40 years, even as the treatment modalities start to change. So once we start to look at that, they certainly needed the skills to survive in this present world. And habilitation is something that's starting back from the basics and build them up to where they need to go.
That's great.
That's why we utilize the term Habilitation Empowerment, and it's also accountable. You notice that when you put the A in there, it's not as though we are patty caking them. We want them to be held accountable for their behavior because we want them to be productive citizens back in Oklahoma.